Shooting in Miramar turned deadly.
A social media influencer was killed after a Lamborghini was shot up. Local 10's Lenny Supal is in Miramar with surveillance video.
This surveillance video will play a critical role in the case. We spoke directly with Police Chief Moss. He says the shooter was intentional, following that Lamborghini inside this neighborhood before shots were fired. Tense moments right before shots were fired into this Lamborghini. The high-end luxury SUV spotted in this surveillance video pulling up to a stop sign. Then another car rolls right beside it before a shooter unloads a series of fatal shots, targeting 3 people inside. The car turns the corner and takes off.
2 people survived the shooting that killed Brianna Johnson, except now, after confirming only 1 left. At 5:33 in the morning, on July 5th, 2026, a lime green Lamborghini rolled through a stop sign in a quiet Miramar, Florida neighborhood and came to rest in the yard of a house it was never supposed to be near. 3 people were inside. All 3 had been shot. Police didn't call it random. Miramar's police chief stood in front of cameras and said the car itself had been targeted. Not a house, not a street corner, a specific vehicle, followed and fired on in seconds. But 3 days later, the case that looked like it might quietly close instead grew by one more name. Brianna Johnson's own cousin, riding in that same car, died from his injuries. So why that car? Was this ever really about Brianna, or about the cousin beside her, or about something that had nothing to do with either of them? Something that started an hour earlier at a gas station neither of them can explain now? She was 21. Online, she was DreamDoll Brii, watched by hundreds of thousands. But she was also stacking something real behind the persona. 2 actual music features credited to her name in just the past year. The kind of quiet momentum that either becomes a career or fades. She was still finding out which. By the end of this, you'll know what the surveillance footage actually shows, what happened at that gas station before the first shot was fired, and why police still can't put a name to who pulled the trigger. You'll also find out who Brianna Johnson was behind the following, and why the answer to who the real target was might not be who you'd expect. Before we go any further, where are you watching this from? Drop it below. We're always curious how far these cases travel. Start with what the camera actually caught. A Ring doorbell mounted on a house that had no idea it was about to become part of a homicide file, picks up the Lamborghini heading west. It's moving normally. No swerving, no panic, just a car full of people probably thinking the night was over. Then a second vehicle enters frame. A white sedan, possibly a BMW, closes the distance fast. It doesn't cut them off. It doesn't block the road. It pulls level with the driver's side, matching speed, matching direction, and that's when the shooting starts. Miramar Police Chief Delrish Moss called it exactly what it looked like on that footage. Certainly they targeted this particular car for some reason. We're trying to figure out why. That's not a warning shot. That's not 1 round fired in panic. More than a dozen rounds land in seconds, all concentrated on one side of one vehicle, while the rest of the street stays untouched. Whoever did this knew where to aim and didn't waste time doing it. And then, nothing. No second pass, no chase down the block. The sedan peels off south and disappears, and the Lamborghini, its driver already hit, rolls through a stop sign and drifts into a stranger's front yard. For a few seconds, that yard is the loudest place in Miramar. Then it's the only sound on a street that thought its night was already over. Here's what almost nobody watching this case has been told correctly. This wasn't a party, a stop, and a shooting. It was a mansion party, then a nightclub, then not 1 gas station stop, but 2. And somewhere inside that longer, messier night sits whatever set this in motion. We'll come back to that. If you'd been in that car, coming down off a party that had already stretched past sunrise, would you have felt like anything was wrong yet? Say what you'd have done differently, if anything, in the comments. The father of the case's second victim didn't wait for the internet to decide who his son was. Arthur Lee Johnson III, AJ to the people who loved him, died 3 days after the shooting, and before he did, Rumors about gang ties were already spreading under his name. His father shut that down directly. "I raised those kids. They weren't troublemakers." Not a statement to police, a statement to strangers, because strangers had already started writing his son's story for him. That's the part of this case that's easy to miss if you only look at the car. Brianna and AJ weren't just two people who happened to be riding together. They grew up like siblings, both out of Pompano Beach, close enough that a photo of them together from a high school event 3 years earlier is still circulating now. Not because anyone thought it would matter, but because nobody could have known it would. What's actually resolved after that footage is simple. Someone followed one specific car on purpose and fired into it with total intent. Not chaos, not confusion, a decision. What isn't resolved is why that car, out of every car that left that party, and the next place to look isn't the getaway vehicle. It's the two people inside it who never got the chance to explain what happened at that gas station themselves. Because before any of that gets weighed against a name, it's worth sitting with the fuller picture of that night first. What investigators have laid out is longer and messier than the story most people think they already know. Grief moves faster than evidence. It always has. Within days of the shooting, two entirely separate accusations were already circulating, and neither one came from police. Brianna's cousin, posting publicly, called out the hairstylist who'd done Brianna's hair, someone who'd reportedly been in that Lamborghini earlier that night and gotten out before the shooting happened. The accusation was pointed. Her account didn't add up. The hairstylist never addressed it directly. She posted that she was canceling her week's appointments, alongside a tribute to Brianna, grief and business, sitting in the same feed. That detail should not matter, but it does. Because while Brianna Johnson was still finding out whether her music was a career or a moment, the person her family is now publicly demanding answers from was someone close enough to have been in that car in the first place, and the case still hasn't told either side anything real. What's strange here isn't just the accusation, it's the timing. Let's slow down for a second. This isn't a stranger being blamed by strangers online. It's Brianna's own family confronting someone close enough to have been sitting beside her hours before she died. That's a different kind of rumor than the internet usually produces, and it deserves to be looked at differently too. Two women who once sat across from each other, one with scissors in hand, now exist only as a headline and an accusation. The second thread has nothing to do with the first. Separately, online speculation about AJ's past gang affiliations spread fast enough that his father felt he had to answer it publicly, on the record, days after burying, or preparing to bury, his son. Miramar police haven't confirmed either theory. In fact, officers have gone as far as asking the public directly to stop spreading unverified claims while the investigation is still active. We should be honest about what that means for a channel like this one, making a video about exactly this kind of case. So, a woman who left that car minutes before it was shot at, and a man who can no longer speak for himself. Does leaving early make someone's account harder to trust? Or is that just what grief looks like when it doesn't have an answer yet? What's certain, underneath all of it, is this. Nothing about the physical evidence supports the idea that this was random. One car, singled out, struck repeatedly on one side, while everything else on that block was left alone. Whatever the reason, whoever's responsible, the intent behind it was never actually in question. There's a detail buried in that missing hour that changes how the rest of this reads. Every account of that night says the group stopped at a gas station, singular. That's not quite right. There were two, and almost nothing has been said publicly about what happened at either one. That correction matters more than it sounds like it should. A single gas station stop is one flashpoint, one possible spark. Two stops means two windows where something could have gone wrong, twice the opportunity for whatever this was to start, and investigators still haven't said which one, if either, is where the real story begins. There's more the record shows that hasn't made it into most retellings of this case. The third person in that car, never publicly named, was shot in the face. He was released from the hospital after having his jaw wired shut. He'll carry that out of a party that started as nothing more than a holiday weekend with people his own age. Hours before any of it, Brianna posted her last story. A parking lot gathering, cars bouncing, someone throwing money out a window, a caption that reads like any other night out, "I been had her, I been turned up." No warning in it, no sign anything was wrong. Just an ordinary Sunday morning, about to become the worst one her family will ever live through. You've probably looked at that photo of the bullet holes along the driver's door longer than you meant to. Most people do. Someone pulled alongside a moving vehicle at an intersection and put more than a dozen rounds into exactly the right place to hit all three occupants. That's not luck. That takes coordination most people don't have. And yet, with ShotSpotter data, doorbell footage, and a description of the getaway car, nobody has been identified. Either the exit was as controlled as the attack was, or there's a real gap in what this neighborhood actually caught on camera. Right now, nobody outside the investigation knows which. What's resolved now is the scope of that night. The party, the club, both gas stations, mapped in full, and the real severity of what this cost. A cousin who didn't survive. A third victim who will carry a wired jaw for the rest of his life. This was never the minor, contained incident the earliest headlines made it sound like. After a detail like that, if this case has your attention the way it has ours, tap like so, it reaches someone who might know something. Send it to anyone who followed Brianna, or who's only hearing her name for the first time right now. And subscribe, because the second there's a name attached to that sedan, this channel will be the one covering it. What still isn't resolved is the only question that's mattered since the beginning. Of the three people in that car, who did the shooter actually want? And whether it was ever really about a person at all. A memorial page went up for Brianna the day her death was confirmed. People are still visiting it. Still leaving something behind for a life that stopped being updated 9 days ago. Picture a studio somewhere in South Florida, some ordinary weekday that never came. Brianna's in the booth again, chasing the version of Bend Over that made people stop scrolling, trying to find out if she could do it twice. Someone plays a verse back and she leans toward the glass to hear it clean. This is the part nobody's feed ever really showed, the work between the viral moments, the version of her still figuring out what she was going to become. It ended on a residential street instead. What remains genuinely unconfirmed in this case isn't any one rumor, it's the motive itself. Police have never released one. And whether the timing of who left that car and who didn't means anything at all is still something only the people who were in it can answer. So far, none of them have said more than, "I don't know." The choice Brianna Johnson made to keep building something real behind the persona, chasing a second feature instead of coasting on the following alone, may be the thing that finally brings justice for Brianna Johnson. Because it means the people who knew that part of her, the ones who watched her chase a career and not just a following, are exactly the people investigators still need to hear from. They targeted a car. What they actually ended was two people who were still becoming something, and for now, no one but the shooter knows which one of them it was ever really about. If you have real information, not theories, not screenshots, the real kind, Miramar Police and Broward Crime Stoppers want to hear from you, and you can stay anonymous doing it. For everyone else, of the three people in that Lamborghini, who do you think this was really about, and why? Say it below. Brianna Johnson, DreamDoll Brii, the Miramar shooting. The driver of that white sedan is still out there tonight. Casebreak Network will be back the moment that changes. Breaking cases, following every lead.